learning today the book of Mishlei, chapter 6. We are up to chapter 6, Pasuk Chaf, in the book of Mishlei, where King Solomon again always speaks with the words Bini, my son. He always addresses people as my son, and the idea is to express the notion that when he's giving advice, it's coming out of a place of care, out of a place of love, and it's with that he tries to make his message resonate better. So he goes on, and here's Pasuk Chaf, Nitzor beni mitzvat avicha. My son, cherish the commandments of your father, ve'al titosh torat imecha, and do not abandon the lessons of your mother. And Rashi explains, Malbim more in detail, but they explain that the commandments of the mother are the commandments that come more naturally to us, the commandments towards which we have more of a natural affinity. And with those, all really you need to do is not to abandon them. So if you have a good habit that comes to you naturally, if you have kindness that comes to you naturally, if you have any kind of good value that comes to you naturally, all you need to be asked to do is really not to abandon it. Just don't leave it. But when it comes to the commandments of your father, meaning those that don't come to you as easily, those that do not come to you as naturally, then he tells you, make sure you cling to them and that you keep them. Pasuk Chaf Aleph, Koshrem al libcha tamid. Always bind them to your heart. When there's a commandment, when you have a commandment, always make sure you bind it to your heart. And one of the ways that's cited as a way to do this is by way of recitation, repetition, and making sure that when you study something, you also recite it and go over it again and again. Make sure you tie it to your heart and make sure that it is bound to your to your neck, like a necklace. Now there's a verse that's very famous, and it's famous because it's cited in the celebration when you finish a masechet, when you complete learning an entire masechet. You say this verse, which is exactly from Mishlei chapter 6, verse 22. When you walk, these words are going to guide you. When you sleep, these lessons are going to protect you. And when you are going to wake up, it will resonate from you. And the rabbis say that this is speaking about three different phases. Is speaking about when you're alive. The words of the Torah stay with you as long as you are alive. And still, when you pass away in the world to come, these words stay with you. In the time of the resurrection of the dead, this is what will resurrect you. And in fact, in the Talmud, the Gemara says that what enables a person to come to life after they die and at the time of the resurrection of the dead is the merit of studying Torah. So three phases of this world to come, and the world of resurrection. Also, another very famous pasuk. In fact, the Maharal of Prague, Rabbi Judah Lowy, wrote an entire book about this pasuk. Kiner mitzvah v'torah or v'derech chaim tochechot musar. A candle, a mitzvah is compared to a candle, the Torah or, and the Torah is compared to light. V'derech chaim tochechot musar, and a way of life are the lessons of musar, of the lessons of ethics and conducting yourself properly. And the Maharal, Rabbi Judah Lowy, he was the chief rabbi of Prague. He lived until the age of 90, when life expectancy in Europe was probably around 40. And he lived in Prague. He was the chief rabbi of Prague, and he was also a big mystical expert and a Kabbalist. And there's the famous story of the Golem of Prague that's attributed, and he really was very much into the sphere of what's mystical and spiritual. And so he wrote an entire book about Hanukkah and also about different aspects of mitzvahs that are compared to candles. And he called the book Ner Mitzvah. He called it Ner Mitzvah based on this pasuk. So Ner Mitzvah, he says the Torah, a commandment, a mitzvah is compared to a candle. Why? Because a candle is good, but it can burn out. A candle is good, but you have to be close to it. Similarly, the merit of a mitzvah is the merit of a good deed is great so long as it is there, and so long as it is it still has the flame, it still has the energy. Once the candle burns out, that's it. You're out of luck. But so you have to be both close and within time of the candle burning. So that's a command, a mitzvah. That's a fulfillment of a mitzvah. The Torah is compared to light. Light is eternal. Light, once it shines, even if it shines billions and billions of miles away from us, the light still keeps on coming. Even after a star died, the light from the star keeps coming. Torah is compared to light. A mitzvah is compared to a candle. The merit of a candle stays with you as long as you're there. The merit of Torah stays with you forever and a candle is like a mitzvah is like a candle, and Torah is like light. And the ways of the Torah, the ways of Musar, are things that are going to protect you and guide you. Now he goes on back to the analogy of comparing Avodah Zarah to the strange woman. The Torah is going to protect you from the smooth talk of a strange woman. Do not covet her beauty in your heart, and do not even take her with your eye. Don't try and consume her beauty with your eye. A woman who is unfaithful is going to cause a man's downfall. How many times did we see someone who's smart, who's capable, who's accomplished, who's everything, and they have a beautiful family and a career, and then because they made a poor choice of not being faithful, then they lost everything. And that's what Shlomo Melech has said. The Torah is going to protect you from that scenario in which you lose everything. Now he says really one of the most powerful analogies that he gives. Well, is it possible for a man to take fire in his arm and his clothing will remain intact? Is that possible? Is it possible for a person to carry fire and his clothing will not be burned? Of course not. Of course his clothing will be burned. If you carry coals, if you carry charcoal, then your clothing will be burned. So he's saying if it's not possible to walk with fire and not have your clothing burned. So he says similarly, if a person goes on and walks on coals, if you ever see those, sometimes there are people that can do it in the Far East, in India, they have people who can do it. But generally speaking, for most of us, if we walk on red hot coals, we are going to get very burned. Will a person walk on hot coals and his clothing will not get burned? So I'm sorry, and his feet will not get boils and burns. That's verse 29. Similarly, if a person goes with his friend's wife, if a person is unfaithful, and not only is he unfaithful on his own, but he causes his friend's wife to also sin with him, similarly, that man will surely be punished. So King Solomon says, Just like it's impossible for a person to carry fire in their hands and not get burned, just like it's impossible for a person to walk on red hot coals and not be burned, so too, if a person is unfaithful and violates the wife of another person, he will surely not walk out without any consequences. He goes on in verse 30, also another analogy. That's why it's called the book of Mishlei, because there are so many levels. There's the analogy, and then that analogy is compared to a scenario in real life, and then that is compared to the concept of Avodah Zarah, Torah, etc. So there's multiple levels to everything. That's why it's called the book of Mishlei. So he says as follows: Lo yavuzu laganav ki yignov. No one will have any contempt for a thief if he steals lemale nafsho ki yir'av. If he steals in order to, steals in order to fill his appetite. For those asking and joining us now, we are in the book of Mishlei, Proverbs, written by Shlomo HaMelech, and it is the book of Mishlei, chapter 6, on Pasuk Lamed, verse 3. Lo yavuzu laganav ki yignov lemale nafsho ki yir'av. No one will have any contempt for a thief who steals in order to feed himself. You know, you can't judge a person if someone's family is starving, and you know his kids are home starving, his family is starving, and he goes to the market and he steals a piece of bread. It was illegal, unethical, etc. But no one's gonna look down on that person and be like, "Oh, that's loathsome." No one's gonna say that's loathsome because he did it in order to feed himself, right? So lo yavuzu laganav ki ginov lemale nafsho ki yir'av. No one's gonna have the contempt for the thief who steals in order to just feed his family. Furthermore, v'nimtza yeshalem shivatayim. If he's caught, if you catch that person who stole in order to feed his family, then they will surely pay 7 times more. They're going to pay 7 times more. They will have to pay the entirety of their home. No'ef isha chasar lev. But if a person violates the wife of his friend, mashchit nafsho yasena, it is completely an act of destruction. There's nothing constructive to it. That person who did something so immoral will find only shame and disgrace, and his embarrassment will never be cleared up. Pasuk Lamedaled, Ki kin'ah chamat gever velo yachmor ben yom nakam. Because the jealous husband of that woman is not going to forgive and have mercy b'yom nakam, in the day of vengeance. So basically saying if someone stole to feed his family, that's something that people might forgive, and he'll also pay the full price monetarily. But if someone of immorality and lack of faith, that's something that will never ever be forgiven. Hey, lo yisa kol kofer. The husband of that woman will not take any ransom. No matter how much you bribe him, he will never ever agree to forgive. He'll never ever agree to let that go. And now we continue on the 7th chapter of Mishlei. Once again, what word does King Solomon start the perek with? How does he begin imparting his advice to when he's giving his advice? He always says, "Beni, my son." He's always saying it from a place that's loving. He's always saying it from a place of care. He's always saying it from a place that's kind. Beni shmor amarai u'mitzvotai titzponitach. My son, keep what I am telling you. My son, heed my commandments. Why? Mitzvotai titzponitcha. And my commandments you should cherish with you. You ever see people carry a precious family amulet? You ever see someone with a necklace that has a special message? Whether it's a family heirloom, a piece of parchment, Sometimes people walk with like a necklace that has something very precious. How tightly do they keep it? How thoughtful are they of it even when they sleep? So too, King Solomon says, cherish wisdom, cherish the Torah, and hold it very close to your heart. Shmol mitzvotai v'chiyeh. Keep my commandments and you will live. V'torati ki ishon enecha. And keep my Torah like the pupil of your eye. Ishon, by the way, interestingly, the word for pupil of the eye, the black part of the eye, is ishon, which sounds like ish, sounds like a man. Because when you look at your friend's eye, you can see yourself in there. So it's ishon, it's a little person. That is ishon einecha. Koshrem al etzbeotecha. Tie my words onto your fingers. Kotvem al luach libecha. Write them on your heart. And the Talmud, the Gemara in Kiddushin, says that when we say kotvem al luach libecha, when we say write it on the board of your heart, then that is talking about the commandment to review everything that you learn. When you learn something, make sure you review it, make sure you remember it, make sure you have a mnemonic or something that's going to make sure that you really are able to retain the knowledge that you have. And the Gemara in Kiddushin, furthermore, elaborates on this passage as key to how you should keep the material that you learn, how you should fulfill the mitzvah of studying Torah. Tell the wisdom, tell Torah, you are my sister. The Talmud says, just like a person knows his sister, just like a person knows that his sister is his sister, so too a person should be familiar with knowledge, with wisdom, with the study of Torah. And the insight is something that you should call your best friend. People say a book is man's best friend. The idea here is that's what Shlomo HaMelech is saying. Wisdom should always be your best friend. The Torah should always be your best friend. It should always stay with you and recognize it as your faithful friend. Why do you need to recognize that wisdom is your friend? Why do you need to realize that Chokhmah is your best friend? Because you need to be careful. There's competition. Yishmorcha me'isha zara. The Torah is gonna protect you from the strange, the seductive woman, minochriya amareya echlika, from the strange woman who is trying to pull you out and draw you out. Ki b'chalon beiti be'ad esh nabi nishkafti. I look out my window, I look out the sort of like a hole that you look through in your door. I know they call it in Israel, they call it a kukah, like in Yiddish, to look outside. But make sure that you are watching out, just as wisdom does. I look outside the window. King Solomon says, I understand the people that are sort of naive, the people who disregard wisdom. Avina Babanim, I sometimes look around at the young teenagers. Sometimes I see a young teenager and he is the one who is easiest to fall prey. Sometimes the clueless, the naive, the unsuspecting young teenage boy, he's the one who's going to be caught up most easily. Sometimes he goes in the market next to the avodah zarah, next to the woman who sort of draws him out. He passes next to his house, her house. It's in the evening. It's in the dark. It gets already dark. Suddenly, he sees a woman who is very unfaithful and she is very heartless. This heartless woman is not in her home. She's always outside looking for prey. This is talking about avodah zarah, but in the analogy, it's talking about prostitute. She goes and she hides and she tries to hunt and get her prey. she catches him, she takes him, and she tries to seduce him. And Shlomo Melech says this is the same way Avodah Zarah finds the unsuspecting and draws them in. We're going to Bezrat Hashem continue tomorrow with this, but I want to take this opportunity to thank those who joined us and really wish you a very good day. Bezrat Hashem, everyone should have a good day, a wholesome day, only good things for you, for family, for your family. And thank you so much for tuning in. Chazakim ubruchim tihiyu.